Welcome to Behind the Line, where we pull back the curtain on the challenges facing first responders and frontline workers. The work you do is unique, and so are the stresses that go with it. Join me as we tackle key issues to reduce risks for burnout, and as we work to support you in doing the job you love without sacrificing being the kind of person you want to be. Hey there, and welcome back to Behind the Line. I'm your host, Lindsay Foss. If you're new to Behind the Line, what you should know about me is that I'm a clinical counselor specializing in trauma therapy. And after over a decade working with first responders and frontline workers around issues like burnout, compassion fatigue, PTSD, and related OSIs, I've become a passionate wellness advocate and educator for those who sacrifice so much for our communities out on the front lines. Behind the Line is a place for us to talk about the real life behind the scenes challenges facing you on the front lines. I created this podcast with the hope of bringing easy access to skills for wellness, allowing you to find greater sustainability both on the job and off. As you likely already know, we're into our Back to Basics for Brain Health series, and I'm so excited to be joined today by Aaron Zamzow, aka Zam, owner of Fire Rescue Fitness. I love Zam's backstory, and he totally gets what it's like to be in the line of fire on the front lines. He created his fitness programs based on the needs he and those he knew within fire rescue and frontline work had. I really value his willingness to dive into this topic and nerd out on the research around fitness and brain health with me. It was such a fun conversation, and I'm really excited to share it with you. Before I switch over to the interview, I want to encourage you to also make sure that you check out the show notes for today's episode, where you can find some great articles that Zam has shared, as well as access to a free trial of his fitness program available for our listeners. You'll also find links to his social media, as well as my own, and I hope you'll connect with both of us in these spaces to really invest in applying what you're learning through this series. All right, let's jump in.
We are making a difference. A lot of this, and I've been very fortunate to be doing this now for, I say 12 years, but I think it's been more in the fire service. I guess it's 12 years. And at first I beat my head against the wall going, how in the hell do we not know this stuff? And, you really have to look at, we're impeded by our own traditions, I believe. And that's really what it comes down to. Fire academies are more likely to teach you what's called a Denver drill, which is a scenario where a firefighter had died in a very unique construction situation, and everybody knows that drill. Yet they all don't understand that simple hydration can lead to a decrease in sudden cardiac arrest and stroke, which are the two things that kill us, by the way.
Yeah.
Right. So, it can be a little, like, it's just eye opening that it's not more in our face as far as but data is helping. Data is really helping. And I think society is kind of helping a little bit through military. We're starting to realize how we've done them wrong, and I think that's starting to transfer into first responders. Hopefully it will the doctors and nurses too, especially through COVID.
100%.
So but I appreciate the opportunity, man. You'll know I talk people's ears off on this stuff because I just think it's, if we can connect with one person each time and they can connect with one person, we're going in the right direction. And that's really what I think that it's all about. So,
agreed. I think you and I are going to get along famously, if that's the anchoring you're coming from. So right. I'm kind of kicking us off then. Tell me a little bit about your story, Zam. How did you, I've read a little bit about you, so I know a little bit of the backstory, sure. I think, but why don't you kind of give it for the rest of those listening about how you found yourself in fire service, but also offering fitness related kinds of pieces to those who do this kind of work.
Sure. Where to begin? Well, first, I'll tell you a funny story behind. So my name is Aaron Zamzow, and of course, in firehouse settings, nobody calls you by your first name. Everybody pretty much gets a nickname. Totally. And mine was is they call me Zam. And then when I started Fire Rescue Fitness about 10 or 12 years ago, I believe it was now. I went by Aaron Zamzow, and one of the things that I really tried to hit home was, look, you don't have to purchase anything from me. I still want to help you. Send me a message. And people would send me messages, and I kept replying on my emails, and I misspell my name, for God's sakes, because I wanted to get my emails out. So I just started saying Zam because it was really easy to type. Z-A-M, boom, click. And so that's kind of how that has evolved to just Zam now, as I go around to seminars and do these podcasts. And it's all a matter of maybe a little bit of laziness, but trying to be as efficient as I can and answer questions. And where that drive came from was before I got involved in the fire service. Now I'm closer to 50 than I am 40. I'm almost 48. And I got in the fire service when I was 35. It was my second academy, I should say, full time. And I learned a lot. I was working with pro athletes before that. I started working in the fitness industry when I was 18. Mm-hmm. So I've been in the fitness industry, 30 years. Holy cow. So I started a little differently. Started working in fitness, was trained some pro athletes, NHL, NBA, NFL. Was really, really fortunate to get some tutelage and mentoring under some of the best trainers, and then started a couple of my own businesses. And one day I was living in Minneapolis, just west of Minneapolis, and saw a sign to join the fire department. I want to get involved in the community. And I started to go to, at that time it was a technical college at night to learn Firefighter 1 and Firefighter 2, and I just fell in love with it. But I also learned my lesson about functional fitness and its importance at that time. So I'm sitting on this fire scene, on the training ground, and a good friend of mine who was worked construction, did a lot of roofing and siding, and so we were doing ladder drills, and he's carrying equipment, gear, and everything flying up the ladder. And here I am struggling. I just was not very fluid with it. And he was just more functionally strong. Now, he also smoked cigarettes. So when we put him on air, I'd catch up to him. But it was really humbling because here's this fitness guy, and here's this guy who's, a couple pounds overweight, but doesn't work out. Mm-hmm. And he's showing me how to do this. And so it was an eye-opening experience for me to look at, okay, I'm doing a leg press, I'm doing a tricep push down, I'm doing a bench press, and that's not transferring. So at that point, I really started to go back to some of my strength and conditioning coaches and some people and said, what am I missing? And, we all talked about, well, when we'd work with pro athletes, we broke down their position, what their weaknesses were, what they needed to do, and what their field of play was. And then we developed programming from there. So I started to do the same with firefighting. I bought a book on Amazon 13 years ago, and I was super excited to get it. It was the only book on firefighter fitness at the time. And I got the book, I opened the pages, and they're doing leg press, like tricep push down, bicep.
All the things I've been doing.
Although they had tighter shorts on and they were a little bit bigger. That was the only difference. So I just thought, you know what, if this information isn't out there and I know I need it, how many other people do? So I just started to, I developed programming that I used. And, I tell the story, I'm like the Rudy of the fire service. I'm not very talented or gifted. And there are some firefighters that are naturally really good at doing the things we do on the fire ground. I am not one of them. I got to work twice as hard. But that's where the fitness came in. And so I now have 7 different programs that I've developed, and I've used them all because as I've aged, I've had to change my fitness priorities a little bit. I've developed a super strong program, an ultimate athlete, a foundations, just about ready to publish a Chiefs workout for, more stress management. Yeah. And so it's really developed out of necessity for me. And I've been very fortunate along the way to have people ask for how I could help them and put programs and processes in place where I have been able to help people. So long-winded answer to your question, but, I think it's very pertinent to what we're talking about.
Well, I agree with you. And I think that there's this fantastic kind of marriage of pieces in terms of the value you have in shaping the conversation today, that you have both the inside perspective from a fitness position, but also an inside perspective from the first responder position. And I think that's a piece that not everyone we've had on the show has. Like, either they're a first responder talking about their experience as a first responder, or they're a professional in a given field who's maybe worked with a handful of first responders but hasn't had the like real life exposure as a first responder. And so to have kind of the vantage point of both at the same time, I think positions you really wonderfully to speak to some of the pieces we want to talk about today. And I know I sent you some of the questions I had in mind prior to this. And one of the things I think you can probably speak to really well because of your background and exposure is this piece about some of the common problems that are faced by those who work in high stress, high exposure jobs, whether that's fire rescue or paramedics or police, or a lot of our listeners are also nurses and doctors and things like that. Because when I work with those populations, I often hear so many of the barriers, like the things that trip them up in doing the stuff that they know is good for them, they know would benefit them, they know the right answers, but the doing it is hard. And my guess is that you probably have had exposure both in your own experience as well as those that you're kind of surrounded by about those barriers and limitations to really engaging the stuff that we know is good for us. So what are the things that you tend to hear as feedback, the stuff that gets in the way for people?
First off though, full disclosure, I mean, I have those same issues. Everybody said, well, you're fit. I'm like, well, I'm not. Obviously, I'm not as fit as I want to be 100% honest, but of course I think I have a different comparison than most, but I have those same struggles. Like, I crush ice cream. I crush it. I love it. I tell my crew that, but I also got a plan for it. So, I think it's really important that everybody understands we all have these barriers, right? It doesn't matter if you're a really fit person or if you're not a fit person or if you're a doctor or wherever it is, we all have these barriers. The second thing I think for first responders is we have a tendency, we're givers. We really want to help and we want to help other people. And sometimes we do that almost like a parent, to the standpoint we do it for the sake of our own health. And I compare the two because when I used to train full time, I had a lot of parents that their excuses evolved around their children. I got to get Susie or Billy or Jimmy or Bobby, whoever it is, to this practice, and I want to do this. And then we got a birthday party and we got to do this. And then, and then by the time and I understand that. And that first responders are the same thing. I think, I had this call, I had that call, this is draining. This is going on. We had this equipment, we have all these things. Now, when you break it down, it's a lot of it is because we're givers. And one of the first things that I think we all need to understand and learn is that by taking some time each day to help ourselves, we actually do a better service to those that we want to, help, including our own kids, right?
Yes.
Like, we want our kids to be happy. We want them to be healthy, yet you got to look at what example are you setting. The same thing as first responders. We know it's stressful. That's an excuse. We know that. We know that time is always going to be an issue. We know that nutrition is an issue because we're this fast paced, and in the fire service, kind of, we hurt ourselves by that tradition sometimes of our own eating habits. So we all have those excuses. It really comes down to stepping back, I think, and looking at the big picture and saying, I need to devote 20, 30 minutes a day to myself. And whether that's meditation, fitness, even just some people, taking a nap, whatever it might be to help make yourself physically and mentally better, you need to do that for those people you serve.
Totally.
So, as far as barriers, I think we all have them, and they're never going away. They're not. Yeah. You just got to figure out a way to deal, right?
It's like a circumnavigating kind of problem, right? Like, I love what you just said. I think it's super funny because I run this 5-day challenge for first responders and frontline workers a handful of times every year. I call it the self-care dare. And the the running catchphrase throughout the dare is that taking care of me lets me take better care of others, right? Like, we are motivated by caring about other people. We get that. But when we don't do something to store up our own reserves, to shore that up for ourselves, it ends up coming out for those we're trying to serve. So our goal of benefiting others only stands to benefit by us doing for ourselves well.
Mm-hmm.
It gives
Correct.
us a better quality of me to offer out to the others that I'm serving. And so I love that piece. I think there's so many like common barriers that are identified by people. Like, I hear so often about, there's no time. You've talked about that one. I hear a lot of the, like, I'm really tired when I get home. I feel really lethargic. Or my job is so physically demanding. Why do I need to work out when I get home? Why do I need to attend to that? I've already done so much in a day. As well as other practical barriers like, I can't afford a gym membership, or I don't have a gym equipment kind of set up at my house, or whatever the pieces are. And you're right, like, those aren't changing. There's not quick fixes to those things. If there were, you would have found them. And so there is this kind of circumnavigating process that needs to happen to figure out, okay, if those barriers are just static and they're givens, how do I work around what those givens are to figure out a way to still prioritize me, because it allows me to do better prioritization of the people that I care to serve.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, I'm aware that we are kind of cushioning this topic in the idea of brain basics. So we've been talking in this series up till now about providing our brains with an investment that allows them to do the jobs that it needs to do for us. So our brain can do all kinds of fantastic things to benefit us as we do this kind of work. But we have to give our brains their best chance to set us up for success, and that vicarious kind of success we benefit from. So when you think about yourself and your experience with others within fire rescue, what are the impacts that you see when people are not engaging in fitness routinely, or who aren't prioritizing that piece for themselves? What do you see in terms of the consequences of that?
Well, I'll tell you, I only got 5 brain cells left, and I need all 5, and fitness helps power them. That's what I keep telling everybody.
I love it.
Yeah, what most people don't understand is fitness and getting blood flow, moving your body helps with cognitive function. I've had seminars where I've been in a room full of chiefs, and first thing I got hives because I was like, I don't know, I needed union representation, I thought, but no, it was actually a plan. I was presenting to some chiefs, and I had a chief raise their hand, and they said, I got all these demands on me. I'm not the one in the front lines. I don't need to be that as fit, or I don't need that fitness as much. And I just said, maybe the intensity of your fitness doesn't have to be as high, Chief, but you're the one who's making life and death decisions about your firefighters on command, on cars. And I'll tell you what, I want you to be as tip-top shape as you possibly can, mentally and physically. And there is a huge correlation between the two. You think better. Your mood is better. I think there in the fire service, with males, there are a lot of jackass. There's a lot of jerks. Let me say.
It's all good. Yeah.
All right. But I think a lot of that is because of the stress of the job. The possibly some, that leads to, a lack of job satisfaction. That leads to a lack of patience. That leads to, issues communicating. And, I think with men, a lot of times when you see in leadership, they're usually older, like my age, 40s and 50s. I think they suffered from stress. They're overweight. They have low testosterone levels because of all the stress. They cognitively probably don't function as well as they should. They don't have as good a coping mechanisms, all because of those stresses balling them up. And one of the things, and I've done seminars, I got an article on this. I said the miracle cure for the fire service is right in front of us. It always has been. You just have to take 2 steps forward to realize it. And really what I mean by that is motion and movement, exercise really can help the cognitive function. It can help coping, as we mentioned, resilience in a nutshell, but it also then drives better, more stable blood sugar levels. It also drives sleep. You sleep a little bit better. You have better self-worth. You have higher self-confidence. There is this litany of things. And when you look at, all right, the fire service, what's really ailing us? Cancer, mental health, PTSD, suicide. Well, what's one thing that can help all of those causes, all those things? It's exercise, right? And of course, there is calendar fit, which we got to get away from. Like, meaning, when I work with people, their goal shouldn't be to be calendar fit, right? Their goal should be functionally fit, cognitively fit, mentally fit. And by working out consistently, at least 3 times a week, that's where I tell people to start. 30 minutes for 3. You're going to start to feel better, move better, and that transfers to serving better. But for some reason, we don't, as first responders, make that correlation yet. And like what and we're making progress because people are starting to ask questions. You're doing great podcasts on it, thank God. And of course, all the data and research tells us, like, I think researchers, especially like in a university setting, look at the fire service, go, you guys aren't too smart. Right? Like, think about it.
We keep telling you the answer.
Yeah, the answer is right in front, and then you can keep doing all these quick little pencil whip things, and yet 20 years ago, we were telling you this. So, I think it all comes full circle with the cognition and the brain health that goes along with body health, and then it moods too. I think my crew knows when I don't work out. As a matter of fact, they tell me go work out.
We need this from you.
Yeah. We're like, Zam, shut up, go work out. And and that's kind of my cue, but I feel it personally too. Like, if I don't get my workouts in, I feel a little lethargic. I feel a little off. And so I think that's the one thing, ultimately, and I'll answer the question at the end, is that we think too often about what we have to give up instead of what we get. And there's all these small intangibles that you don't know and realize until you're at that point. So you work out 12 times that first month, and if you really look back at it, you're like, I feel better. I'm doing better. I'm not arguing as much. And those are those things that, unless you're in it, you don't realize. So
yeah, totally. I love so many pieces of what you just said about that. It's hard to choose which one to pick on. I love the idea of the intangibles, and I think you're right. And I think those are the ones that are really hard to hang on for some people, like, because it does take the 12 times in the month before I feel like I can look back and have that track record that tells me that there was an intangible payoff. And so when we are focused on what we have to give up, and that sacrifice feels high and the reward feels delayed, right? Our culture and delayed gratification is not awesome.
Not conducive.
Right? Like, we don't handle that well. And so when we don't get an immediate sense of payoff for what I've sacrificed to what I get, it's hard to make it sustainable. And I think that's why there really is significant meaning in these kinds of conversations where we can really anchor to what the research does say and the very real wisdom of kind of this mind-body connection, that our brains need us to do certain things in order for them to work optimally, and we benefit from when they work optimally. And if we can anchor to that, and knowing that my consistency in doing some of these really basic things 30 minutes 3 times a week, like that can be a significant difference maker in offering my brain its best chance to give its best back to me, that it sets us up to maybe be differently motivated towards doing the things that do feel like high sacrifice and delayed gratification reward. Right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's hard. there's times where I'll go on vacation and I'll take off, a week or 2 weeks, and
Yeah.
those first workouts back, it's hard. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important for anybody who, is in the field. I've studied fitness. I've talked fitness for 30 years, but that doesn't make it any easier. And you're not alone when you go, it's tough, right? Like
Yeah.
it's that first 10 or 15 minutes, some days of working out. It's tough,
Yeah.
but those are also the most rewarding, I feel, when you're done with it. And that's kind of what keeps me going, is that feeling afterwards. And of course, knowing that I have to talk about it now a lot,
Yeah.
really helps to motivate me too. But I think it's important that everybody understands. Also, not only with fitness, but with mental health too.
Yeah.
It's right, and that's your field more than mine. But it's important to know that you're not alone. And and if I could even interject on that, we had a pretty traumatic call with my department recently, and one of the firefighters that was involved came in, and we were just talking, and we all talked about, and this person is very fit,
Mm-hmm.
and they flat out said the importance of their workouts really helps them keep their mind right, and it's a very positive outlet for them dealing with the traumatic incident. And
Totally.
it was confirmed by everybody in the room. Now the people that were in the room were pretty fit and healthy, but understood the value of it. And and that's just another one of those intangibles that most people, when they say, hey, I want to start a fitness program, they don't say because I want to be able to cope with the crap that I've seen,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yeah.
really that's what happens. And
Yeah.
the research on PTSD and mental health is saying it helps you get unstuck from seeing that image. And, right, though, you hit it on the head, though. It's not one that everybody writes down, like we said, on the assessment form,
Yeah.
but knowing that is a positive, and having us talk about it, it might be enough for someone to say, hey, maybe that's what I need to start doing,
Yeah.
So,
Well, and it's, I think, tricky because some of the rewards are, like you named it, intangible. They feel so um disconnected from the moment that I'm doing the damn thing to when I feel something from it. And one of the things, so there's some research that talks about how our brains are a really oxygen rich environment. Like they thrive with as much oxygen as possible. And how we get oxygen to our brain is through the blood flow we have that is oxygenated blood to our brain. And there's been more recent research in the last number of years that talks about brain plasticity. So the idea that our brains can actually produce new cells and grow and evolve their interconnectedness over time. So a long time ago, we used to believe that you were born with all the brain cells you would ever have. And from the moment you're born, cell death is the only thing that happens. And then a handful of years ago, we had better research capacity because we have better imaging technology now that actually discovered that there's parts of our brains that continue to get cell growth throughout the course of our entire lifetimes. What's super interesting is those areas of our brain are actually really oxygen rich environments. And so, what's been shown repeatedly now is that people who have stronger cardiovascular health are more likely to have these specific parts of their brain continue to grow more cells better than people who aren't as cardiovascularly healthful. And so it's this really interesting piece that suggests that we actually have a greater potential to learn, grow, evolve, develop, and survive as a result of that if we have a brain that has as much oxygen as we can give it. And that comes through our fitness. And it's interesting because when you tell people that, they're like, oh, that's a really good reason to do these things.
Right.
But most people don't know that that's a thing. So they just think that, like, when I do fitness, I will look good. And when I look good, I'll feel good. And it's kind of this behavioral level change that's really hard to will for ourselves. I don't think we fully understand or appreciate the depth of like chemical, physiological, neurobiological change that unfolds when we invest in this part of ourselves. And what I love about what you've said is that it doesn't even have to be a lot. Like, it's not like you have to go be a bodybuilder to get those results. Functional fitness can come in 30 minutes, 3 times a week.
that I think you hit it right on the head. It doesn't have to be 5 days a week, 7 days a week, because what happens is we defeat ourselves before we even get in the gym, because we look at our week and we go, "There's no way I can get in 4 workouts this week, so I'll start next week."
Totally.
Right?
Monday.
I'll start Monday. I'll start the next day.
Yeah.
And that continues and continues for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years. But the research just, and it's even immediately it's showing differences, right? Like in some of the, as we're able to get more data, it's showing, hey, that 30-minute bout really helps. From a fitness standpoint, when we work and focus on mobility, what we find is that your muscles are more limber, throughout the day and throughout your shift. So you're less likely to get injured, or if you do get injured, you're more likely to bounce back just because of your mobility. And, same thing I think happens with the brain, right? And the mental side of stuff too. And it comes back to, and I think all of it goes back to consistency. We just said, one bout helps, but what really helps is consistently setting that, that example, consistently setting that workout or that in movement time. It's just even walking. They're showing at a low pace. Because I think a lot of us also get to a point where I don't even know where to start. Well, I say the first thing you need to start doing is move your feet and close your mouth, meaning monitor what your activity level is, monitor what you're eating. Didn't say anything about changing it at all. Just understand, what am I eating, and really how am I not moving, right? It's really easy to be sedative now, more than ever.
Yeah, totally.
Even as a first responder, because you go up on a truck and you're on the truck all day, or you're riding around and if you have to make a cognitive effort to be more active and more physically active. And that's, I think, the first start. And then secondly, again, monitor what your nutrition is. And then, you just, Nike, heck, I don't want to quote Nike, but you really just have to do it. You have to find a time for so many reasons, right? We've given so many, but I also think the one thing that's like for children and for chiefs, it's the example, right? If it starts up on top and is in our culture from the top, it's going to work its way down. Now, what you're seeing is the middle and the lower part of the fire service. The younger generation is being inundated with this data. The middle generation is starting to understand it. Now, the top generation, in their defense, they had always had fires that kept them in shape, right? But now we also notice that we did a very huge disservice, because a lot of the older generation in the fire service has cancer, has mental health issues, right? So we're kind of backing up and going, what did we miss? But I firmly believe that to change this whole thing, it's got to start with leadership. It's got to start with education. And then ultimately, everybody's got to look in the mirror and say, okay, what can I do to help change this? Not for just me, but for my family, and I have t-shirts out that say for me, for my crew, for my community. That's really why you want to be more healthy physically and mentally. And, and those two things together make you a more resilient person, more resilient first responder. And then ultimately after that, and I use ultimately a lot because I get excited, but it transfers to better service. Which is the goal.
So that's the thing, right? I think like when we started talking, I told you that part of my story and coming into this and doing this podcast and whatever is that I was mad. Like, I'm mad that I continue to have the same conversations, and that this information just isn't out there and easily accessible and present to people. And I think so much of the mad feels connected to these pieces where it's like, why aren't we having these conversations? Why aren't they showing up sooner along the way? Why do we have people who, I think the thing that makes me most mad is that I get so many people who are now on stress leave and are being forced into retiring as a result of their injuries, largely traumatic stress injuries, occupational stress injuries. And it's so frustrating because when I look at them, they're people who love their jobs. They love what they do. They're highly connected to that work. It feels like part of their identity. And they lose all of it because we didn't prepare them more effectively to be sustainable at it.
Yep.
And I think that's the thing that bothers me most is seeing these really great people who are really extraordinarily skilled, who offer a lot to the profession, tank because we've failed to equip them adequately with what they need to be able to stay in it long term.
Yeah.
Right. And so
Yeah.
I value some of these pieces that you're bringing to that. And I'm curious, like when you think about people who do show up and have so many of these barriers, who say, I can't because of dot, dot, dot. How is it that you go about addressing that with them? Like, how do you work at getting them on side for their own selves?
Well, I think, the first thing is you have to change their mindset, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's, and we hit it earlier in this, and it's not about what you're going to give up. It's really about
Mm-hmm.
what you're going to get. And
Yeah.
what most people don't understand also is, and there's research that backs this, a 30-minute workout every day makes you more productive, believe it or
Yeah.
not. Because of the energy, number one, but I also think it forces you to, be a little more organized in order
Mm-hmm.
to get that in. And in eating healthy, we also look at what we have to give up. And I always say, well, don't look at what you have to give up. Let's just do a couple things. Let's add something. Let's add water, hydrate
Yep.
better, and then let's add some fruits and vegetables. And then we're going to talk down the road about maybe restricting sugars and looking a little bit better.
Right.
But it comes back to, all right, we're going to add water, we're going to add veggies, we're going to add fruit, and we're going to add activity. And before we do any of that, we're going to just take our mindset and first understand, yes, it's hard.
Yeah.
No, you're not alone. Everybody has these same things. And, you use those people around you for motivation. So-and-so just lost 25 pounds and they're doing it. I think I can go do it. If you want some motivation, go to YouTube or even look around you, because there's a lot of people that are doing some very motivating things. And that's kind of what motivates me too, is like I'll turn on YouTube and I'll watch, someone who has a lot more limitations than I do, and they're out there doing it. So, okay, that'll get me through that workout. So you change that mindset a little bit, get people moving, get them understanding a little bit about the fuel that they're using and that connection. And then I think what's also important is you have to make kind of a personal inventory about how you feel, right? If we're not asking ourselves how we feel, and it's really interesting. I'll tell people like, well, after a workout, well, how do you feel? First thing they'll be like, well, tired. I go, yeah. Dig a little deeper.
And then what?
Right. Dig a little deeper, because that feeling like, hey, you know what? I feel like I just accomplished something. Good.
Yeah.
Let that, it's like that one good golf shot that brings you back after you do 150, right?
Totally.
It's that one good golf
shot.
It's the
thing you anchor to.
Yeah. And so that is how you change it. And when people don't change their mindset and don't commit, we'll fail at fitness. But you know what? That's okay. This is a journey. There's numerous times where I've not been in the shape that I've wanted personally. There's numerous times that we all can look in the mirror and go, I'm not where I want to be. But it's all about trying to make progress and going in the right direction. So I think, the combination of those things, if you want a step-by-step approach, it's first change your mindset. 1, get more activity. 2, start drinking some water, start figuring out a little bit more about your fuel. And then 3, just do some surveys, internal surveys. How are you feeling? How are you doing? And then, obviously 4, make that consistent commitment. That's it. And then you can go on 5, find some people to enjoy the journey with you, which I think is important. And we do that. Fire Rescue Fitness. We have I have a closed group on Facebook. We got about 3,000 people, and they'll post stuff every once in a while just to help motivate each other. And it's really cool. Trying to build each other up.
Those community kind of vibes can be so fantastically motivating in the midst of it.
Yeah. It's cyclical. It comes and goes in waves with the seasons. January is really a little more popular on it, but
I bet.
yes, the
seasons of resolutions.
Yeah. Yeah. There are days
Yeah.
people will post, hey, just FYI, I redid my assessment and this is what happened. And sometimes you don't
Yeah.
see it because you're in the middle of it. And then the watching the comments and the momentum grow
Hmm.
is really cool. So,
That is
yeah.
really cool. So, when you think about kind of like practical first steps, I love how you broke down, step one, focus on your mindset. Step two, try to work it, adding in some movement. Step three, focus on hydration. If we were to break down step two, focus on some movement, what are the I don't know, top three, top five? You pick the number, it can be
Mhm.
seven, I don't care. But what are the kind of foundational pieces that you tend to really encourage people to start out with when it comes to trying to incorporate movement into their lives a little bit more? Particularly as it relates, I think, to this idea of functional fitness
Yeah.
connected to first response work.
Okay. For first responders, mobility and core is
Okay.
really something. A lot of first responders are actually in a lot of pain joint
Yes.
wise, I believe. And so before we talk about lifting weights, I just talk about moving better.
Yeah.
And, I started to create these little things called flows. And, going back to my original story, all a lot of the stuff that I develop is because I need it, but I
Mm-hmm.
wake up in the morning, I'm a little more stiff and sore. So I started to create 3 or 4 movements together. I call them flows. They take about
Mm-hmm.
50 seconds, but
Yeah.
even simple doing those type of things. And it's just a simple, might be a body weight squat or just bending forward at the waist, touching your toes. And
Mm-hmm.
so start with mobility, 2 or 3 exercises or movements just to get the blood flowing and to
Yeah.
get more range of motion. Then add some core work. Planks are really, really good for us, but it doesn't even have to be too advanced, just something that works your core. And then if you want to incorporate in some resistance training, yes, it's a necessity, but not when you're beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Beginning consistency is more of a necessity. And
Okay.
so mobility work, core work, then go do a bike or a jog or whatever it might be, just a little bit of cardio to get the blood flowing, and then end up with just some light stretching.
Okay.
Get in the habit of listening to your favorite podcast, hint, hint,
Mm-hmm.
or listen to some music, something that helps you mentally get away too during that time. Three for 30, and that's where you begin. First month, I always tell is, look, I don't care what you do that first month. Give me 12 workouts, and
Yeah.
they could be all 12 the first 12 days. I don't care. But
Yes.
look at the calendar, mark it off, and say, okay, I accomplished this. I worked out 12
Mm-hmm.
days. Now what's next? And just keep building from month to month, week to week.
Yeah.
I think we look at, oh, I want to lose 30 pounds. Well, you can't lose 30 if you don't lose one, right? You
Yeah.
can't you can't do 12 workouts if you don't do one. So
Yeah.
look at short term, week to week, month to month, and then as you continually build momentum, you can look a little bit further out. But
Yeah.
it's really about taking small steps. And I have a meme that I post, like just a quote, and it's not about being the best; it's being better than you were yesterday.
Yeah.
Eventually it starts to get to be where you want to be the best, but you got to start somewhere, and everybody's got their own
Mm-hmm.
journey. So the first thing I would tell people is work mobility, work core, add a little bit of movement to it, and then we'll build from there. And that's
Yeah.
what my programs focus on. Every program starts with mobility work and adds core work. And
Yeah.
then the strength is a dime a dozen. You can go anywhere. There are ways to be more functional for first responders without getting
Okay.
too diving into too technically with it. But that's one of
Yeah.
the things that I think I do pretty well over the years of
Mm-hmm.
starting to get a better idea of how to train more functionally.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I could talk your ear off on that topic, but I think we gave it people enough to
Well,
start with, right?
what if we give that snippet? So if people have really enjoyed kind of hearing you talk and feel like there's alignment between what some of their goals are and how you've spoken about some of these topics, where can people find you? What
Mhm.
kinds of pieces can they kind of connect with? What would be the best kind of starting points for where people could go for more support around kind of this idea of functional fitness with you?
Sure. Firerescuefitness.com is my
Okay.
website. It's run by me and my dog, and she's sitting here right now. She doesn't answer a lot of emails. So,
but she's really cute.
Yeah. She, it's really, everything has been me up to this point. It started off as a hobby and it's now transferred into, being able to speak at a lot of conferences, having conversations like this. So go to www.firerescuefitness.com. And if you go up in the icon that says contact FRF, that's really me. And I'll actually give you a 28-day program, a free 28-day program. It's got, and it's not just your run of the mill. It's got access to our app. It's got eating guidelines. It's got access to the coaching group that I was talking about. It is a full 28-day program that will really, really help you out. And it's free. Awesome. So if they contact me there, they can also find us on Facebook and Fire Rescue Fitness Facebook page. And if they send a message, that goes right to me as well.
Awesome.
And I'll get back to them. It might take me a day or two. Sometimes when I'm on shift, I'm a little bit delayed.
I mean, it's so unreasonable, but
yeah, right. Yeah, right. Yeah. Yep, I know.
Fair enough. I think my response level is a little bit like that too.
Yeah. So if I'm on shift, it may take a day or two. But send me any messages with questions if you want that free program. Yep. We also then, people go, well, why give it for free? Well, I got into this to try to help 100,000 first responders get more fit. Yeah. And that started 12 years ago. Someone asked me the other day, well, what are you at? And how do you manage? Well, based on, free resources that we've given out or programs, and we're about halfway there. So, cool. They're helping me with my mission. And then of course we do have programs that add on to that 28 days. So they can purchase programs that are 60 days that are a little bit more elaborate. One of the cool parts is we have a lot of people that have bought a lot of our programs because they challenge them, they help them continually progress. And that's kind of the whole goal of it.
Totally.
But yeah, that's the best way. And I'd appreciate anybody reaching out.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I have a blog too that I just posted the 21 reasons why every first responder needs to work out. We talked about a lot of them here.
Yeah, totally.
I just posted on percussion guns, the massage guns, what are the best ones and do they work? I do have a mobility routine that they can get started with. We have some great information on nutrition there too. And so I write a lot and that's where they can find me.
Okay, cool. Well, and we can, I'll post in the show notes a link to your main website. And then if there's any of those additional kinds of bits and pieces that feel valuable, I think the links you had sent me, I'll post as well to some of those specific blog articles. But if there's anything else that would feel helpful and that you think would kind of align to our conversation today, shoot it over to me and I'll throw those into the show notes as well so that people can have like an easy redirect to some of those things.
Appreciate it.
Sounds good. That's awesome. I so appreciate your time today, Zam. It was really lovely to chat with someone else who kind of nerds out on
right.
things. I feel like it's good to know it's not just me who gets riled up about first responders and brain science and how our bodies fit into that picture. I for sure super nerd out there.
Yeah, we could probably talk all day.
I feel like that is probably true.
Your listeners would be like, all right, we're done. We've had
Cut
enough.
It.
But I'd love to do this again. And I can't thank you enough for the opportunity. Obviously, you're as passionate as I am to try to help out and, just trying to make an impact. So if we help one person in this, that's really what we're trying to do. And again, thanks for the opportunity. And if you need more, let me know. I'd love to come on and talk anytime.
Thanks one more time to Zam for taking the time to connect. I want to again encourage you to check out the show notes for today's episode to find links to Zam's programs, including a free trial of his fitness program and some of his valuable blog posts on topics related to fitness and mental health. I will also encourage you to check in with yourself using our Beating the Breaking Point Indicators Checklist and Triage Guide. You can find it in the show notes and use this to assess yourself, where you're at with burnout and where your needs might be, so that you can invest strategically into these areas of vulnerability. As always, please reach out and connect if you have any questions or feedback. I love hearing from you and shaping this podcast to echo your needs and interests. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Lindsay A. Foss, or you can email me at support@thrive-life.ca. Please keep sharing this resource with those you know. And until next time, stay safe.